see if we're on. There we go. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Mm-hmm. Yep, we checking the sound. Go ahead, log in and see if you can hear. We can check on my phone. Either one's fine. Can you hear me? That's fine. Go ahead, just check your phone. You hear me?
It's delayed. Because I just heard you say, can you hear me?
Oh, that's fine as long as they can hear. Yeah.
No, it's like delayed. It's from the first time you said, can you hear me?
Let's see.
Because what you just said, I didn't hear it. And I hear it, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, that's cool. Yep. It's supposed to be delayed like that.
Okay.
Because we're live and then, you know, it's translated.
Okay.
The good thing is they can hear me. So welcome to the Count the Cost tonight, where our focus is on having real conversations about transparent topics regarding your habits and your financial behaviors. This conversation is not about blaming any parents, any family members. It's about recognizing our financial beliefs, right? Once we're able to identify our financial beliefs, our financial past, and our financial habits, we're empowered to change them, right? So if you can start to think about, I pinned this question in the chat. If you can think about one money lesson you learned from your family that you want to change, you can start flooding the chat with that lesson. So before I jump in, I want to talk more about like my personal connection with finances. So when I grew up, like most of my life, I was surrounded by people who were making money, right? But I never really had a financial roadmap. I didn't have someone that told me, if you did this with your money now, this is what it could do in your future, right? At the age of around 12, I went to foster care system. And in foster care, there wasn't many transition services. There wasn't conversations about this is how you can spend your money. Again, really lacked that. And then at the age of 18, I had my first daughter. At that point, for me, finances became even more real because I was no longer responsible for the finances for myself. I was responsible for the finances of my daughter and also my family. So for me, what I really had to start to think about was not just earning money, but how to manage it, right? So one of the things I want you to focus on is more money can help you, but more money also builds and creates more money problems. I was talking about this the other day where everybody wants more money. But if you had to be real about your current financial situation, we typically struggle to manage the money that we currently have, right? And again, we're not in a blame phase where we're blaming family members, we're blaming friends, or even blaming the economy, right? This is all about what you can change. One of the most unempowering things that you can do is blame everything on everyone else, right? Instead of positioning yourself on what can you do today to make that change. So one of the things I want to talk about is families often pass down beliefs before they pass down financial tools, right? That was me growing up and watching, whether it was my mom or other adults, run from the bill collectors, right? Be scared of the IRS. Like I was absorbing those beliefs. I had the belief if there were certain things that need to be paid, you work really hard and try to pay it. You don't even talk to people about it. I also had the belief that it's not okay to talk about your debt, right? Your savings or your money for that matter. But it was okay to show those things off. But we'll talk about that soon. So one of the things that we have to remember is you cannot change a financial pattern that you're unwilling to name. I never forget when I was in college and I started to have this financial behavior, but I wasn't willing to name it. I had an amazing mentor that was very real about me and my financial behavior. So you want to position yourself when you start to name those things and don't feel guilty or pressured by it, right? When you think about your ability to identify something, you're left with two opportunities, right? You either ignore it or you do something about it. So tonight is all about what are we going to do about the behavior that we're going to name. And speaking of, I want you to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, I want you to like this channel. I also want you to share with other people, because here's the key. I'm going to be talking about environment, whether it's today or in a couple other sessions, because if we can't change our environment, it's going to be even more difficult to change our habits. And one way you can change your environment is you start to invite people in to the environment that you're already changing. Because then they're left with two decisions. Either they get on board and start to change it, or they wither away, okay? And most of us have a lot of family in our circles. So here's one small decision, right, that can really help your financial patterns that you've had for years, right? The first thing you want to start to do is start to identify your behavior, right? What is one thing, like today, think about it. What is one thing that you want to change regarding your financial belief or financial habit or behavior that you learn from either family, friends, or loved ones, right? You can drop it in the chat. You can write it down. I actually encourage you to write it down because, again, as we continue these sessions, I want you to start to think about and build from these things, right? It could be the lack of paying bills on time, right? It could be not tracking your spending. I know when I talk to people all the time and I, tell them to track their spending, they're like, I have an app to do it. I have a budget that like tracking your spending isn't just track. It's really watching your spending and analyzing your spending behavior. What are things that you typically buy that you don't share with yourself, share with your friends, or share with your loved ones, right? What are some of those patterns and behaviors? Eating out because it's convenient. We live in a world where I tell people there's a cost to convenience. Even to the point where, they've created your Ubers, your Shifts, your Lyfts. So if you want something, you can get it right now, but at what cost? Other things is using credit to solve reoccurring problems. Now we know there's this belief of being either debt-free, right? Or credit is king, right? Depending on what side of the coin you're on, it doesn't matter. I say control your credit behavior, right? When you're able to control something, that means you're spending it and using it intentionally and making sure that you're paying it back and you are being leveraged by it, right? It's not leveraging you. Most of us get into this, I'll just put it on my credit card because it's an emergency habit, and we're never really paying the full balance, so we're paying even more for a problem when we can actually be proactive and prepare for it earlier on. Other things is avoiding bills because they create anxiety, right? I remember when I got into all this credit card debt and I had a lot of bills to pay at once. I would just start avoiding them because I'm like, maybe it'll go away. And maybe that's a belief that you got from a family member that you're trying to pass down. But understand this. When you name it, identify it, then you can take control of it. And then finally, increase in spending every time your income increases. I am guilty of that because it feels good, right? Tonight's conversation isn't only to talk about the facts. It's to talk about the feelings. They say that budgeting is 80% behavior and 20% numbers. This channel is going to focus on that 80% of behavior and 80% of feelings that we typically don't talk about when it comes to financial management. Because like I said before, everyone wants more money, right? That's the number side. But your inability to manage it is based on your behavior and your feelings. So we got to do some feelings work, okay? So the other thing I want to talk about is the family pressures and boundaries that exist, right? So you can love your family, right? But you can still have financial boundaries. I got into a lot of student loan debt. And a lot of it was because I was giving it to family. And here's the key. Most of them, they weren't asking for it. They would just state a problem and then I would pay for it, right? They would talk about a challenge that's happening. I would pay for it. So for me, I was driven to try to solve problems with my finances. And when I started to shift and try to create boundaries, that created a lot of pressure and a lot of issues between me and my family. Again, this channel is all about being honest and real about what it takes to start to make financial changes and the behavior that it takes, right? So when I say saying no, right, it doesn't mean that you don't care. Saying no means that you're trying to protect your household and stop the cycle. How many of us say okay in public but complain in private about somebody borrowing money from us, right? About us just choosing to pay something? We have to start to put an end to that. One of the things that I typically say now is, if you're going to borrow money from me, we have to have a deeper financial discussion, right? That's one thing. One thing you can also say is, nope, I'm not buying that. I'm focused on my finances, right? It's this shirt right here. You can go ahead and get it on my channel. You can click the bio, or you can create your own slogan. You can just tell people, no, I can't afford to do that because I'm focused on my priorities and goals. Because listen here, when you are saying no to something, you have to say yes to something else. And start to write down, what are those things you're saying yes to, right? It could be you're saying yes to your emergency savings. You can be saying yes to your bill payments. You can be saying yes to your personal goals. And then more importantly, you could be saying yes to your peace of mind. When I started to change and instill financial boundaries, I was saying yes to my kids at that point. Because every time I put money out to a friend, a family member, or gave it without purpose or preparation, I was taking from my kids, right? And when you start to think about your priorities, you want to make sure that you're protecting them. You write them down, you commit them to memory, and you protect them. So this is how you break the cycle, okay? I want to give you 4 steps to breaking the cycle. First thing you have to do is identify the patterns. Instead of using the blame game on everybody else, right? Use it on yourself. What are you going to blame yourself for doing? And that's a whole different headspace you have to get in, right? Get a piece of paper, get your notepad, it doesn't matter, and say, what are my typical financial habits or behaviors, right? Here's the thing. Name the good ones or healthy ones and name the unhealthy ones. You also don't want to focus on all the money mistakes, right? Because if you have good money habits and patterns, you can use that as a platform to be motivated and launch from. But if you don't have good habits, right, you want to start to identify where they came from, right, and what you want to do to change them. So the first thing you want to do is be real about your patterns. You do this before you even start to budget, before you even look at income, because again, those beliefs are typically passed down. You probably seen other people doing it, right? Or you develop them out of just your ability to survive through life. But now it's time to identify what those patterns are. Step 2, let's talk about step 2. Decide what changes with you, right? Choose one behavior tonight. Choose one behavior that you no longer want to pass to the next generation. I sit around my siblings and we talk about money behavior and the impacts that we either want to make. And sometimes we fall into this cycle. We start blaming the past. We start blaming our parents. Well, we grew up and didn't have this. We grew up and didn't have that. And unintentionally, what we're doing is we're not being proactive about what we want to pass forward from a positive mindset to our kids. Because what that creates sometimes, that can create someone who just wants to splurge because they feel like they grew up with nothing. Or on the other hand, it can create somebody that always wants to protect every cent that they make because they grew up either in poverty or with a poverty mindset. So what you have to do is you have to start to think about, okay, what am I trying to pass forward to the next generation? And what am I not trying to pass forward to the next generation? For myself, one of the things I'm trying to pass forward to the next generation is intentional budgeting, right? Creating an intentional spending plan that has your goals connected to it. Most of us are making budgets or spending plans and we don't even know why. We don't know what we're trying to prioritize and we don't even know why it's important. And then another thing you should do, right, to break the cycle is automate one thing. I remember growing up, automation was just like, I'm not putting this on auto pay. I don't trust the bank. I don't trust. that behavior and belief is something that we need to shift, because when it comes to investing, we need to automate our investing or spending. I meant automate our investing or saving, because we automate our spending. Think about in the last week how many times you just spent money on something that you didn't plan to spend money on, right? It was automated. You just did it, right? Sometimes you don't even remember. But at the same time, think about how many things that you have on auto save or auto invest. We have to start to find a balance, okay? So remember, think about one thing you want to put on auto pay, right? It could be a bill. You could say, hey, I'm trying to make sure that I'll automatically pay this bill. And then the fourth thing is you have to start talking about money. That was taboo in my family, right? The only time you talked about money is probably when you were making it. But nobody knew that somebody was struggling financially. Nobody knew that someone had debt. Nobody even knew like the financial roadmap or financial goals that people had. Again, not trying to blame people, but trying to say, let's start to shift the conversation. So when is the last time you had a money conversation with your kids, right? With a spouse or with your circle? I tell people, start to do an audit of their circle. Think about probably like the last 5 or 6 conversations you had with your friends or your loved ones. How many of those were focused on positive money behaviors? I'm not talking about, hey, cuz, can I borrow this, right? Hey, nephew, can I get... No, I'm talking about, hey, this is the financial goal that I have for my kids. I want to make sure my daughter goes to school for free. So this is our plan. Or I'm saving up $1,000 to start my emergency fund. I'm saving up $500 to start my emergency fund. Think about in your circle how many people are talking like that. Because on the other hand, you come to this channel because you are trying to shift your financial behavior. But if no one around you is having that conversation, you might need to shift your circle. So we'll go over the 4 things you can do to start to break the cycle. First thing is you want to identify the pattern. Second thing, decide what changes you can make so that you're not passing something negative to the next generation. And then the third thing is create one automation action. That can be investing, that can be paying bills, just one thing, right? And then the last thing is start talking about money. Here's the other thing that I'll say about talking about money. You have to learn to be honest, right? That's really tough. I never forget when I was in school, my professor used to ask me like, hey, how are you? I used to be like, oh yeah, I'm good. Because I had this money belief that if I told somebody my problem with money, what could they possibly do to help me? I also had this belief that I didn't want any handouts. I don't want somebody just giving me something. I want to work hard for everything that I'm, earning, everything that I get. Sometimes those are limiting beliefs, because you don't know how people are planning to help and support you. And then on the flip side, by not having those real conversations, you are not allowing your family, friends, etc. to absorb some of those blueprints. So for me, I went from poverty and not knowing a lot about money to wanting to spread financial blueprints, because the people around me, my mentor, friends, or even individuals online that I learned from, allowed me to develop a blueprint that I can then pass forward through money conversations. So again, you want to make sure that you are breaking the cycle, because it doesn't mean that you're being perfect. I think that's the other intimidating thing about becoming more financially free. You feel like you have to be perfect at everything. I've blown my budget so many times. But then at the same time, to feel more control is to tell my kids, like, we need to go on a spending freeze, right? Because I'm not just building a budget to build it. I'm building it to be able to rely on it when I need to. But then I also feel comfortable understanding, like, sometimes I'm not going to always go back to my budget this month, but how do I recover the next month? Okay? We all know we get busy. We all know again, we can blame things, but this channel is not about blaming. That's over. Some of us are getting too old to blame, because the more you blame, the less you're able to take action. Okay? So speaking of taking action, I have a little freebie for y'all. So I want y'all to go into my bio, go to my website, 1428fw.com too. You can sign up for a free document that will help you start to have the money conversation. There are 5 questions that you should be talking about with your family, friends, or loved ones. But let's quickly engage the audience because, I love to talk, but I want to hear more from the audience. I want y'all to put in the chat, what money lesson did your family teach you? Or what financial habit should your family stop doing? Right? What financial habit should your family stop doing? And then I'll give you a third one. What financial habit should your family start doing? Okay? I want us to start to take action right now. Okay, I see the chat is going. I can tell you one financial action that I want my family to stop doing. When I'm saying my family, it's me and my kids, is feeling pressured to buy things based on other people's views, right? Based on other people's opinions. They have this outfit, they have this swag, I think I should get it. Like, that's one thing I think we need to stop. Because at the same time, like, why does that matter? Again, growing up, we used to always want the Jordans because everybody was wearing Jordans, or the Air Force Ones because everybody had Air Force Ones. I tell my kids now, right, why don't you, instead of becoming a consumer, become an owner? Buy shares of that company. Because every time you then buy a pair of shoes, who profits from it? Right? You feel less guilty. Okay? And I see somebody in the comments said guilty, right? That's real. We have to start to decrease the guilt that we feel behind our money and our spending. My parents always said we were one paycheck away from being homeless. I think that was the first introduction to money. Yeah. Typically our behavior, our first introduction relationship with money is through poverty mindset, right? Or poverty reality, right? Family members, whether it's friends, family, adults, like, it doesn't matter, are in spaces where we've had bad experiences with money and we can't help but to pass it to our kids. Because for most of us, we're trying to warn our kids about adulting, right? We're like, listen, we don't want you to have to go through what we went through. But if we think about that generational cycle, a lot of us went through a lot of negative financial beliefs or behaviors, or for some of us, realities, and we're just passing that forward. Okay? That's one thing we definitely want to adjust. Bring back pay less. Yeah, there are so many different options and alternatives to paying more for things. Now, again, they don't have Payless, but they got Sheen, right? They have these other things. And here's a funny belief that we have, right? If we buy enough cheap stuff, right, or enough things that cost less, right, we're creating a deal. But it typically adds to our behavior where we done bought like 50 pairs of shoes at a lower rate, but we still spent the same amount, right? So there has to be a balance in the why behind what we're doing. But here's the good thing. Everybody online today is committing to identifying a pattern or behavior and changing it, because that's what it's about. Again, we're done blaming. It's all about how do we move forward. So let's start to make a call to action to ourselves. All right. From now on, not only are we going to identify a pattern or behavior, we are also going to have money conversations with people that we typically don't have money conversations with, right? Because we always talk to them. Think about the people that we're always talking to and how we need to change the money behavior. All right. So again, hopefully today you got some really good tips. You got some really good nuggets. If you didn't, go back and watch it again and again, because there are 80% of financial behaviors that we need to change, because the 20% of the numbers don't lie. Before we start to change the debt, we have to change why we keep getting in debt, right? Before we change the amount of money that we're investing, we have to change our mindset behind investing. So this channel is all about the mindset. It's all about transparency. It's all about honesty. I want you to like, share, subscribe, and continue to count the cost. I'm Dondreá Brown. My original company is 1428 Financial Wellness. The new channel is Count the Cost. It's all going to be content that helps with that behavior. Make sure to go watch my stories. I've been popping some stories out there with some small strategies for you to take advantage of. Go to my website. Take advantage of all my freebies. And again, I'll see you in the next video.